You're watching B-Side with the Jazz Eclectic, a conversation in music, the arts, and the lifestyle of jazz.
And away we go. B-Side.
This episode of B-Side with the Jazz Eclectic is sponsored by Remington Family Distillers, purveyors of handcrafted spirits out of Austin, Texas. Check out rfdistillers.com.
How you doing? This is Bijon Watson speaking to you from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm in my home bunker and created the illusion of having a safe space here in Boston. And it's really cool to be back with the gang, with the B-Side crew, our lovely producer, Samantha Mann, and of course, my partner in crime, Mr. Bunny Sexton. But today, we're really thrilled to have Doc Watkins with us. I had the pleasure of working with Doc, I guess it's 4 years ago now, when we recorded his big band album in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Those of you who don't know, I go back and forth between LA and Boston. And we had the pleasure of recording his big band album there, and we became fast friends. He's a fantastic arranger as well as piano player, and he has a lot of irons in the fire. Let's just say that. He's got a fantastic, right? He's got a fantastic club in San Antonio, Jazz, Texas, that he curates and is the artistic director of, and plays there 5 nights a week. Is that correct? 3 to 5 nights a week, Doc? 6?
Yeah.
Sometimes? If you can't find somebody to play on a Saturday night, you'll jump on in?
It's 0 nights a week at the time being, but it typically would have been 5. So I'm trying to average it out. You know, I'm shooting for 3 nights a week, so I need to do 0 for about the next year.
I can dig it.
But yeah, we did about, with my band, we did at least 200 shows in 2019, maybe more.
Wow.
It's amazing, man. That's a lot of shows.
That's a lot of shows.
Yeah.
Let's just say that Doc is a tireless performer. And, you know, in this business, it's easy to become jaded if you're not always creating fresh and new music. But Doc is always on top of that and always creating new stuff and really pushing the envelope. And, you know, I think he's takes himself out of his own comfort zone by trying different things, willing to collaborate with a lot of different artists that are not necessarily in the same genre that he is in. So it's really exciting every time I get a chance to work with him. We just have way too much fun on stage. Yeah. I think we spend about 75% of the time smiling at each other and then
joking around,
actually making music. So it's really a treat to have him join us here and take time out of his schedule. And just because he's not playing doesn't mean he's not busy. And we'll talk about a few of those things that he's doing to stay busy right now, even though venues aren't necessarily up and going at their full capacity. Should I say it that?
Yeah, to put it lightly in our case. You know?
Yeah, right.
So what have you done? I mean, you know, you've got the club, man. That's a lot there unto itself. So what have you been doing to pivot and, you know, work through these times during this amazing time we live in?
Man, it's a great question. And this is an amazing time. We've never been through anything like this as jazz musicians. I mean, the last great pandemic of 18, 19, 20 was really at the early stages of jazz and prohibition. So we've never had this happen where we had a thriving restaurant and bar industry and live entertainment industry that relied more than ever on people gathering in tight spaces and getting packed in. And then all of a sudden it's like, I mean, we went back in March from the last night that we were open at Jazz Texas was March 14th, and it was a sold out show, and the place was packed and people were dancing. It was a Saturday night. Bijon, you've been in the big band before with us and seen the place just lying out the door. And then we were closed 3 days later completely, and we haven't reopened since. And so like everybody, at first, you know, we all thought this is going to last for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months at the most, but this is a temporary thing. Let's shut down. Let's catch up on all the Netflix we can and learn to cook like Gordon Ramsay. And, you know, I did that I gained 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks of the quarantine and rewatched Narcos and, you know, Band of Brothers and all this and a bunch of other shows. And I was like, this is great, you know? And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks into it, I was like, this isn't great. This is terrible because I miss my friends and my bandmates and the audience, and I miss providing music to people. And so we weren't even near to the worst of it at that point. So this is back in April. And so we started this live streaming, and we decided that we didn't want to just live stream just to do it or to take it lightly, but we wanted to try and create a show. So we went full on in a live broadcast type of situation. And this was where, you know, even Jimmy Kimmel and Fallon and those guys were, you know, hunkered down, and they're doing their shows from their bedrooms and everything. And we had this empty club available to us. And I thought, well, what can we get a bunch of cameras in here and create a network? And Bunny and I talked about this earlier. I had a great camera guy that came in and basically created a television studio for us. And I started calling my friends. I called Bijon, I called a lot of the local cats, called Gary Lux, our producer friend in LA, and said, hey, why don't you come on the show for 10 minutes and have some laughs and talk about what you're up to. And if you've got a new album out, we can promote that. And so we created a show, and that kept me busy for quite a while. And then at the end of the summer, I decided that I've never had time to teach, so might as well start teaching online. And I created an online course. So I've just, you know, pivot. I've always felt that pivot wasn't strong enough of a word. It's more like a transplant. Because
the term I use is dance on a shifting carpet.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at least with a pivot, you still have one foot firmly planted, and then the other, you know, but in this case, it's just like we've been completely uprooted, and we've got to find our way. So, you know, we're still not through this thing. No one knows how long it's going to last. But one thing that it's made really clear to me personally, I've learned a lot about, I think we've all learned a lot about ourselves during the quarantine. Is that I can't sit still for very long, and I have to play music, and not just play music for myself, but I have to find a way to connect with other people through music. And really, it doesn't matter if it's an audience of 1,000 people or 50 people or a virtual audience, but it's like breathing. You just have to do it. And that's why this has been the hardest thing for us musicians, because we live off of that energy that's created in those live performances, and to have that completely.
Well, that's why Bijon and I were really taking our hat off to you, kind of watching you through your social media and what you've been doing this whole time, because, you know, us doing Jazz Eclectic and trying to figure out what that was all about and what we're going to do. And as you know, it's like, you know, none of us are going to do anything unless it's pro, you know, if it's just, you do your best to make it as pro as possible. Right. And so when we were watching you, I kept telling Bijon, I'm like, man, if you're going to do it, you do it like Doc, because he's doing it right. I mean, it just seemed like whatever the circumstances, you've been able to you know,
but you know, work with. The hard thing is, though, Bunny, that we're stuck in this, especially during these times. But I think this is really any time. It's just a all of life kind of thing, where you want to do something and you want to do it at the highest level possible. But the only way to get to the highest level possible is to be bad at it for a while. And it's like because you remember when you were a kid learning your instrument. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether you were Louis Armstrong or Mozart or Oscar Peterson. You went through a phase where you sounded terrible, but nobody cared because you were 9 years old. And so when you become a professional and you're an adult and you're used to a certain level of quality, and then you're forced into an arena that you don't know anything about, you have one of two options. Number one, you can just say, I'm going to sit this one out, and I'm not going to get into something that I don't know anything about. Or what I prefer, I actually really, I kind of weird this way, I guess. I like getting into things that I'm no good at, just to find out what it's like. And then, I mean, nothing has given me a better appreciation for stand-up comics than trying to do stand-up comedy myself for years, working at it and realizing how utterly terrible I am at it. And so we lucked out in a lot of ways with our live stream program because we were able to find a producer and a video guy right off the bat locally in San Antonio that was just, he had gone through all the steps of being bad at live streaming years ago, and he had gotten very good at live streaming. So we were able to come on board and basically take our show and just pair it with his skills. But you're right. It's like you want to do something at a high level, but there's that intermediary stage that you have to go through. But what's the other option?
But aside of the technical, aside of just the technical aspects of what you guys were doing, you as the club owner and having to now produce a new kind of show, where were those conversations? Was that just kind of your idea? Okay, this is how we should do this show and create this show. And then, how did that whole thing transpire in terms of how you were going to create a new style of show, if you will?
Yeah.
In terms of content.
Well, I've always loved the old, like the old Johnny Carson shows and whatever videos you can find of like the Rat Pack live at the Sands. And there's not a whole lot of great videos from that era, but the whole idea of, and I hate to use this term, but the variety show, because it sounds so cheesy and superficial, but the whole idea of,
we used to say,
well, you have to understand that when color television came out, this is around the time that Sinatra was, at the height of his era. And you had producers and composers and band leaders like Doc Severinsen saying, how can we give people the most value for their time? And you're watching television, so it's free. I mean, it's paid for by advertisers, so you have to sit through the commercials. But it's like, if someone's going to give me a half an hour or an hour of their time, how can I pack in the most value possible? And so they put music in there, and they put comedy in there, and they had some dance routines, and they built a cool set, and they had interesting special guests. And so we were in this really weird position where, and that's always been important to me, is the show. I love the word show business, because it takes you back to those days, the Vegas days and the early Hollywood days, where that was the mentality. It was about the viewers and the guests, and how can we provide the most value for them? And that's how great show business is done. And so here we are trying to do that, because that was important to me. I didn't just want to do a live streaming concert, because other people were doing it, and they were doing it probably better than I could have. So how can we mix it up? But the trick is, we can't get an audience in, and we can't even have special guests in, so we have to do it remotely. So we created just off-the-wall, corny segments where we thought, well, everybody's bored, they're at home, and there are all these games that they play on these variety shows. So can we create a game? And so I've got a buddy who's a writer in Los Angeles named Hugh, and he said, Hugh, can we like brainstorm together? And we came up with the idea of doing a board game, but spelling it BORED, but it's like a board game where we just compare people that so it'd be like, and if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. We say, the board game. Now it's time to play the board game, and you know how the board game works. We take two famous people, both of whom are boring, and we compare and contrast them, and then at the end of the game, I get to decide who's the biggest bore. So it was like, I think the first episode, it was who's more boring, Justin Bieber or President William Howard Taft? And then you sort of compare and contrast them. Well, on the one hand, Taft was a peacetime president, and he gave a lot of speeches, but he's never been quoted in anybody else's speeches. And then on the other hand, there's Justin Bieber. And so we just started putting segments together, and then all of a sudden, when you put the musical numbers together, you realized we just did an hour and 10-minute show with no commercial breaks, and it just sort of became a rhythm to it. And what was crazy to me was that the viewership stayed as high as it did. I mean, I think we had over 1 million views in the span of a 45 episode run, and
it's amazing.
It was so it happened. But I'll tell you that and I'm not saying you should, but if you watch episode 1, it's pretty rough.
As they always are. We all know how that goes. Doc, talk about value. You guys are doing this not just for the local community there in San Antonio, but obviously you've gotten a larger reach now. But what have you been seeing kind of changing and reshaping in your local area because of the show? Gosh,
I mean, it's been great for us locally in the sense that when concert opportunities have come about, we're the first people that folks think about. So we just did a big outdoor show at the AT&T Center where the Spurs play and where, you know, Michael Bublé would play, and they've got an outdoor arena that we just did a packed out show, packed as you could be, with picnic tables distanced 10 feet apart. And we have a long run of Christmas shows coming up where at the Tobin Center, where it's like the Smith Center in Las Vegas, and we're doing 16 shows there. So I think that what benefited us and our viewers locally is that we just stayed in touch with them. So it's like, you know, and I mean, the one thing where this pandemic has been really hard on us musicians on a professional level, but on an emotional level, I think we can all admit that we're incredibly blessed that if you're going to be locked up inside your house, at least you can pull out an instrument and play it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I have a piano in my living room that I've taken for granted over the last few years, and all of a sudden here we are, and in the pandemic, and I can't go out, and we're quarantined, and I can go and play that piano, but other people can't. You know, if most people aren't proficient at an instrument, so they're here starving for music,
right, and
trying to find something on Netflix to watch, and they've watched everything else, and there's nothing left that's interesting, and they've read all the books and listened to the, you know, podcasts and the whole thing, and it's like we can just go away from all that and play music. So the ability, I think, for us with our local audience, like our solid, you know, regulars that came down to the club, to do the live stream for them was to keep them in the music and to bring music into their homes, and then also just stay in touch with them so that when live performances do come up, we're like, let's do it. Like, we're ready to go. And we're not, and we've been, you know, Mike and Brandon and I, my trio, we've been playing together regularly because of the live stream. So it's like we could do a whole concert at the drop of a hat and not really skip a beat. So it's been, and again, that was never part of the plan. That it was almost like, it's like when you have this feeling inside, like, I just have to get outside and get a breath of fresh air and take a walk. That's how I felt back in April. It was like, I just got to do a show, and my only option is to live stream it. So I got to play music for people. So we just started doing it, and then over time we got better and better at it. And it was, and I've always wanted to have a show like that too. In the back of my mind, I've always thought, wouldn't it be fun to be on the Johnny Carson show? You know, or just to do that type of thing.
Well, do you think that that's going to, when you open up the club again, do you think some of that will spill over and you'll start kind of doing certain nights that kind of, integrate some of those ideas? Or, you know,
we're talking about that. That was something that came up early on, which is, should we just outfit this entire club as a television production studio? And we're working on that. We're looking at, you know, nobody knows how long this pandemic's going to go on. I mean, some people say it's going to be over. You know, some people say it's going to be over by the election. Some people say it's going to be here for years to come, and it's just always going to be there, and the industry is going to be changed for a long time. So it's really hard to make a big investment in both money and time and effort to create something that might not be as needed in just a few months' time. But I do think that we've created something almost accidentally that's been really special for people. And now that we've stopped doing it, just as of the last few weeks, because we've had some repairs we had to do to the club, people were getting just an outpouring of emails and, you know, social media messages saying, we really wish to show, or we really missed the show. I've had a lot of people email me saying, we never missed a single episode. In 45 episodes, they planned their week around watching the show. And it was 3 nights a week, and they never missed a show. So I feel like we owe it to them to find a way to keep that thing alive.
Because even if you were able to do some sort of like live nights where you're doing that, where, you know, somehow able to integrate some of the aspects of this show in a live setting.
Yeah, the trick is going to be, and you guys have played, all y'all have been down to Jazz Texas, and you've seen how the machine works. And we have 100 chairs, and we have a full kitchen and a full bar and a little dance floor and a stage. And it's like, there are so many moving parts that my staff was so well just versed in like being able to avoid each other as they walked around the corridor and not bump into each other with a glass of wine and a plate of cocktails, and everything was like an oiled machine. So if you put a production crew down there and start to do video, how does that all work? And that's a little scary, because the Tonight Show happened in a very controlled environment where we tried to recreate the atmosphere of a club. But, the Tonight Show happens at 11 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's fresh and sober, and that's the only thing they have to do is make a show.
Okay, yeah. So for the most part, they've created the illusion of sobriety.
Exactly. Well, it's like with my buddy Todd Glass is a comedian, and he played 4 shows at the club a few years ago, and he has a Netflix special out where they created a comedy club as a television production studio. And he said that people, but it wasn't a real club. They just did it, as a temporary studio. And people have been asking him ever since, where is that club? Can I go there? He said, well, no, it doesn't really exist. It's just a studio that we built. But our club is actually like a real thing. It's not just like La La Land where you build the set.
I only laugh because on the last show we talked a lot about digital.
Well, we lucked out. We lucked out with La La Land because we opened the club, and 2 months later, this movie comes out, and it's like, how could we have gotten the timing better? And people are like, man, I see the club in the movie, and there's Bijon up there on the stage, and I wish I could go to a place like that in real life. And then all of a sudden, people realize that place actually exists, and it's called Jazz Texas. And then Bijon, you came down, and people lost their minds when they got to see you play the trumpet on the stage at Jazz Texas.
But speaking to that. Okay, so speaking to that end, you have created and where. Okay, those of you who aren't familiar with where Jazz Texas is located, it's in San Antonio, in what's called the Pearl District, and it's renovated. It used to be what was the factory that it used to be? The Pearl.
It was a beer brewery.
Beer brewery, right? Yeah. So they have this amazing hotel there. I always talk about this. I was like, Doc, we got to go back. First time Doc hooked us up, and I think it's the Hotel Emma. Okay, which we need to make them a sponsor of the show as well. But the Hotel Emma is this hotel, which is fantastic. But I say that because the location of Doc's club is a destination in and of itself, and I think it's important if these venues are going to come back after this, this strange time, then they need to be destinations. They need to be places where people want to go out, and not to toot Doc's horn so much, but I mean, the food there is amazing. The mixologists there are amazing. The customer service is there. So there's a whole experience that you have when you go to Jazz Texas that I think is important. And you will align that with the music and combine that with the music, and then you've created a destination. And I think more time needs to be spent if these venues are going to be open and going to be successful, creating that. That's what Bunny and I do with our Jazz Eclectic shows. We make it an experience, whether it's adding in a DJ to spin stuff in between, or the emphasis on original music. Mm-hmm. You do the same thing. You mix up your programming. You've got Latin jazz. You've got R&B flavored stuff there. You've got everything going on there. So it's our home, and swing, right, and outlaw jazz and all these different things. But I think you've created a model for what more venues need to look at. So to create.
Well, thank you. The restaurant business is. I would not have believed you a year ago if you said the restaurant business is only going to get harder, because right before the pandemic, I mean, it was as hard as it could get as far as just the overhead and the margins being as close to zero as you could possibly get, and oftentimes less than zero. And now to think that the restaurant business is only going to get more difficult. And you're right, Bijon, that the only way to make it through is to go back to the days of the variety shows and the all-in kind of experience. And
all-in, I like that. All-in experience. So when you go out, you're going to get the whole kit and caboodle.
You have to, and I respect the chef as an artist, in the very purest sense. If you've seen Hero Dreams of Sushi, where, you pay $300 just to sit down and eat the most amazing sushi that you've ever had. And there's always going to be a niche for that, for like the purest kind of thing. But that's such a small percentage of the industry that I think that unless you are in that 0.0001% of restaurant people who can survive only on the quality of your little, super hyper creative dish that you've created, you're going to have to figure out, okay, is that really why people are coming to my restaurant? Are they coming for me as the chef? Because you guys know, as musicians, people might buy a ticket to see you, but most of them don't come to see you. They come for the experience that you're going to give to them, and to the way that you're going to make them feel. And what I learned early on as a club owner is that the number one thing on the mind of most people in a jazz club is romance. And
I was just gonna say
that's Bunny. That's Bunny.
it's all about the sensuality. So go on though.
So we are just facilitators in that sense. I mean, I've played even during the quarantine. I've played gigs, marriage proposal gigs, which I didn't even know was a thing, where someone said, I want to propose to my girlfriend, and it would mean the world if you guys would be there and would play, because I want to create this atmosphere. And a lot of jazz musicians, I think, would probably scoff at that idea because they feel like, oh, it's got to be about the craft, and we don't want to be a wallpaper kind of situation. And there are extremes, of course, but the point is that you have to understand. I mean, if you're trying to do something for a living, you're trying to get paid for it, and you have to understand what people are actually willing to pay for. And if you can make people feel a certain feeling, if they leave the club or your show thinking, man, that was a lot of fun, they're going to come back again and again and again. So,
dude, that is exactly why we love talking to you, because I think between all of us, we're on that same exact page, and that's exactly why we started even Jazz Eclectic. You just defined it. That's exactly what we've always talked about, because people want an experience. I mean, as musicians, there are some fans that like you to circle jerk on stage, as I say, but people want an experience. I mean, it's not about, it's so far beyond us as musicians. It's way beyond that. And the idea of inviting the audience to be part of the show, if you will, which is important. I think, going to your club, the Jazz Texas, I mean, by the way, that place is amazing. I mean, we walked in there my first time. It's just such a beautiful venue, man.
It's
it's a great place you've got set up.
You described it perfectly, Doc. It's an all-in experience, but from the moment that you walk down those stairs into the basement and the doors, it's like you're entering a whole nother world. And the way that you've created this kind of magic in that space is, I mean, it's unparalleled. I think the closest thing, not even to compare you to, but the closest thing that I felt is even with our partners at Proprietors Reserve here in Las Vegas. It's a place that really is sultry and brings that romance, like you mentioned, but you both do it in such a unique and articulate way that is nowhere else. And I think, while we were out there doing the show in Texas, we were talking to the people who came out, and they came from all different cities in Texas. Mm-hmm. And that's a testament to what you guys are doing in that space, really creating that experience and the night that no one wants to miss.
Well, thank you. And you got to understand that it took a team of people. I mean, bartenders and chefs and architects and designers. And I mean, I cannot give enough props to the people that bought into the vision when we created the place, and then also continued day by day to buy into the vision, where every day, and the entertainment business, the service industry business is rough. Sometimes you're really tired and you just don't want to go through the same thing again. It's like Groundhog Day sometimes. And I have a team that would just get up every morning and do the same thing and serve people just selflessly. But I want to tell you a quick story, Bunny, to your point about the experience and this idea that really we're there to provide an experience to our guests, the people that bought tickets to the show, and give them a certain feeling, whether that's romance or joy or they're celebrating something. I've always been my harshest critic, and I'm super hard on myself. And the older I get, the more I've backed off a little bit. But we all are. I mean, that's how you get really good at what you do. Is you have to just beat yourself up day in and day out. And we had this was probably 10 years ago. 7-8 years ago, we had a regular Friday, Saturday night gig at a steakhouse in downtown San Antonio. And right across the street was the Majestic Theater, which is where it's like the historic theater where everything from Broadway shows to the Nutcracker to ZZ Top would come through. And they had a theater right next door. It was owned by the same company called the Empire Theater, which was a little bit smaller, but still pretty big. It's like 900 seats. Beautiful, beautiful historic theater. And the manager of the steakhouse that we were working at, he encouraged me to start a concert series over there because we were packing out the steakhouse so much that there was more demand than we could supply. And so I decided to rent out, and we did a Christmas show at the theater. We sold tickets. They were like $50. And I thought no one's going to pay $50 to come out and hear the big band. And we sold the place out and it was packed. And the day of the show was really stressful because I was promoting the show and I was producing it and I was renting out the theater and I wrote all the arrangements for the band and I was emceeing the show and playing the piano and doing the sound check and all that stuff. Running around like crazy. And of course, like always, a couple things go wrong. I mean, it almost never goes perfect, right? And so we packed the place out. It's December. Everyone comes out in tuxedos and suits and ties, and the ladies have the gowns, and everyone goes to dinner beforehand. And it's just magic, right? And it's a Christmas concert. We do this huge show. Everyone goes nuts. And I'm fixated on all the things that went wrong because I knew that we could have done a better show, even though everyone didn't seem to mind about the mistakes. I knew that it could have been better. And if we had tomorrow night, which we didn't, it would have been even better. And so I walk across the street at the very end of the night, and I'm having a cocktail at the steakhouse, and the manager comes out to have a cigarette, and we're talking, and I was kind of down, and he said, well, how'd you think the show went? And I was like, well, it was a success and everything, but I just really feel like, I don't know, it just wasn't as good as I know that it could have been. And he says to me, he goes, you know what I saw? He says, I saw hundreds of people leaving the theater, and I could see smiles on all their faces. And that's what matters. And I mean, it's a really simple story, but it blew my mind because all I was thinking about was what could have gone better. And all he was seeing as a very seasoned restaurant manager is there's a group of people that just had the time of their life and would gladly pay for a ticket again. Right. And that's what it's about. So I was focused on me, but I should have been focused on them because they were happy, so that's why we do this.
Yeah. That's why we do it. Yeah, we obviously go through the same thing. Bijon and I are really hard on each other in terms of the concert series, and then we forget that people walk out with a smile and thanking us and wanting autograph. Last time we just autographs, blah blah blah. You're just like, oh, I guess we did okay. Is it okay? Probably good. We're all really hard on ourselves because, I think we're in terms of this conversation, we're all very blessed too because we all have a business sense about us as well. It's far beyond, you said earlier, the quote unquote music business. A lot of artists, I believe, kind of forget that and they just think about the music. It's like, well, it's way beyond that. If you want something lucrative out of it or something way beyond the idea of just being really good at your instrument or your craft, you got to have a business sense. And I think that's really important. So,
to your point, Bunny, it's a balance of artistry and business acumen. You do have to find that balance. I mean, there's we could go down the list of amazing instrumentalists and vocalists, but you would want to see them perform because they have not focused or learned or spent any time learning how to connect or wanting to connect with the audience. It's more self-serving as opposed to really understanding who who you're performing for, you know. And Bunny is always saying all the time, it's like, man, you know, so many of these jazz cats, man, they just get up there and they're just playing for themselves, man. It's just I won't use the terminology that he uses.
I know what you're talking about.
My drink hasn't kicked in. But if I could take a moment, speaking of my drink, so like...
You know, but the reason why, and especially this confirms, like during the times we live in right now, the importance of cheers, the importance of the audience, because if without the audience, we don't have anything. You know what I mean?
You talk about balance between the artistry and the business, and you're right. It's really hard. I mean, this is the thing is that it is so hard, and what I've always shot for is to not have any balance, but to have like a perfect merging of the two, to where there's not a separation, but that's really more of like a platonic ideal. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you never get there perfectly. So that idea of balance, and you know, it raises the question: if you do something, because here's what's always assumed: if you do something artistic, let's just say jazz, and you play jazz, and no one shows up to your shows, or maybe 5 people show up to your shows, then it's assumed by a lot of people that you must be a really, really, really serious jazz musician. And you're really good. And the reason there's only 5 people is because 99.9999999% of the people didn't understand what you're doing, and that's on them. But those 5 people that did really. Right. But then at the same time, if you play a jazz gig and 50,000 people show up at your show, then they also say that, well, then they say the opposite. They say, well, that's not real artistry, because if it were, 50,000 people wouldn't show up. And there's a really false dichotomy that happens there. And there's a quote that I'm trying to think of roughly, G.K. Chesterton talked about. He said that it's often, we accept that oftentimes great art wasn't appreciated during its day, but we make the mistake of thinking that that if art is successful, then that means that it must not be great. And that's a logical kind of mistake that we don't want to make, because, and I mean, you go back to Miles Davis on this, that Miles somehow managed to be at the forefront of his craft and also sell out arenas. And so what's your barometer? That's the question that's so hard to answer. What's the barometer of whether or not I'm doing it right or not? And
but I think philosophically you can't approach it as if you're trying to please everyone. I think it's not a matter of trying to please everyone. It's a matter of putting your best art out there and trusting that the audience can connect with it.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think that's on the artist.
Yeah.
That's on the artist. I mean, and we need to spend more time doing that as artists. I mean, from the presentation of the show to the content, it all needs to be thought of as, like you said, one entity, right? So,
yeah. Well, going back to your story, Doc, that example that you gave is that when someone came to you and said, "Listen, what I saw coming out of that venue was a bunch of smiling faces." It's good that we're tough on ourselves and trying to make the most, make the show as best as possible. It's also great to be able to have someone do that, because what that's going to do, we can realize when, okay, I did this right and I did this right. How do I can apply that now to this next show or whatever that's going to be. Why were they smiling, this and that? And I think the people really do dictate what, our continued successes, or where you go wrong or where you go right per show, and this and that. And it just helps us learn as with each step of the way, I believe.
Somebody said, I don't know who, but that the true measure of success is whether you can look your 10-year-old self in the eye, or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right.
But would your 10-year-old self be proud of what you're doing now? And I heard that for the first time, and it blew my mind. Especially as musicians, because probably when we were all 10, I mean, no one decides I'm going to be a professional musician when they're 25. That's a crazy thing. You can be 35 and you can decide, I'm done with painting. I'm going to be a lawyer, and you can be a really great lawyer.
Right.
It'll take you a couple of years, a couple tests, and whatever, and you can get there. But no one becomes a great at playing music and really gets good at their craft unless they start at an earlier age. And so it's like when I think about when I was at the piano practicing my butt off at the age of 10, and my mom was asking me to stop practicing. What was I going for? And whatever that was, am I doing that now?
Yeah. That's a great transition into education, by the way, and looking at your website and how you educate. You state that, you teach, what is it? You teach
jazz.
The way that you learn how to speak, right? So can you elaborate on that in terms of, when you...
Well, so there's a few things. First of all, I've taken conversational language courses in Russian and French in the past, and really love the idea of one of my dreams in life that I have not achieved is to be completely conversationally fluent in another language. And I don't even care what language it is, but I'd love it for it to be either French or Russian. But that aside, over the years, so many people have come to me and said, like, can I take some lessons from you? Because I took 10 years of piano as a kid, or I have a bachelor's in piano performance, but I cannot improvise my way out of a paper bag. And every time I watch a YouTube video or get a textbook, they just lose me right away because they're talking about the Dorian mode and the Mixolydian mode and all these different voicings of chords that I can't even, I don't even know where to start. And so it's like opening up a instruction manual for an IKEA cabinet. And you're like, oh my gosh, really? I still have yet to complete an IKEA thing. I'll never order from IKEA because and I think this is terrible. So the point being that I've long thought, why can we not break down jazz music in such a way that in a short period of time, a complete novice can at least start to form sentences, just like you could ask your way to the bathroom or the next train station in French after 30 days. And I know that there's a lot of, I would never say that I can teach someone jazz in 2 months and they can be completely proficient and go out and get a professional gig. Nor would any of the conversational French people say, I can get you a dissertation in the French language after 30 days. That's not what most people want. Right. Most people aren't looking to get a professional career. They already have a career and they want to sit down at the piano at the end of the night and play a little jazz. And so it really started to awaken in me the question of how do we learn, and how did I learn this music, and how did I learn piano in general? And this haunting idea keeps coming back to me of, the idea of learning our first language. I mean, with very, very few exceptions, every single person on the planet becomes fluent in a language by the age of 5. I mean, think about that, right? With no methods or whatever. Crazy. And the way it happens is they're exposed to it, they're immersed in it, they're given certain pieces, like concrete pieces. I mean, we don't take a baby and just start trying to get them to say phrases and sentences. We teach them the word ball and dad and dog and blankie. And then once they have a few of those pieces, we start to help them create sentences, and then we let them just go with it. And so where's the balance between rules and structure and absolute freedom? And one thing that a 2-year-old is not afraid to do is fail. And so I created a course just all inclusive of these ideas of, I think that the main barriers to entry for learning to play jazz specifically for any person, regardless of their caliber in other styles of music, is first of all getting over the fear of sounding stupid, because the fear of public speaking is worse than the fear of death for 70% of people. I mean, most people just would die to get up on stage and do something that sounds stupid. And but no 2-year-old would ever feel that.
How many times do we get off stage and we have this optometrist or this surgeon go, man, I wish I could do what you do, I mean.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And no 2 or 3-year-old would ever think twice about, I'm sorry, Daddy, I meant to say dog and I said dad instead. I'm so sorry. I feel so stupid. That would never happen. So, another great quote is that genius is to maintain the spirit of childhood into later years in our life. And so how can we take this music and teach it to people in ways that, first of all, gets them doing it right away? Like, nobody says to a 2-year-old, practice the word ball and then come to me and say it. I mean, all you have to do is look at the way that people learn language, because the fact is, whatever method the human race has come up with for teaching language to little kids is 100% effective. And psychology tests have totally debunked this idea that, well, kids are smarter than adults, so they learn faster. I mean, there are certain things that are more natural to kids, but adults are smarter than kids. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so I created this course, and it's been absolutely enjoyable for me. And the students are, I have students in the course who are 19 years old and students who are in their 80s. And it's crazy. Yeah. One of the most moving things to me is to hear someone in their 80s saying, I've played piano. I had a guy send me an email, said, I played piano for 60 years. And I've always wanted to learn some jazz and just never did it until now. And this is a life. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. So that's one of the blessings of the quarantine. I would have never done that course if we were, I'd be plating food right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, we keep saying it's important as artists to, take advantage of this time in the positive ways that we can in order to improve our artistry. So that on the other side of this, which there will be another side of this, that we'll be able to come out the gate and share, and hopefully have better concepts of how we want to share that with our audience and really bring them in. And so, you're definitely doing that. You're definitely doing that. Right.
Well, thanks. I definitely want to try and think of all the ways that we can make the most of this time, and I realize that not everybody, I mean, there are people that are able to sit this thing out. There are other people that have gone and gotten other jobs with Amazon, or I mean, I have one of my trumpet players is remodeling houses now, and my trombone player is doing the same, and everybody's kind of gone to different things, and one of the things, like, talk about forced perspective, is it seems like one of the things that the quarantine has really shown to each person is what are they able to do, but what do they really want to do? And it's a great time for people that maybe wanted to get into the jazz business but not that bad. And they realize, man, maybe it'd be better for me to go do something else. And but you really have to.
When the reality sets in.
Reality sets in, and you have to do the deep work of these existential questions, like, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing right now? What's my purpose? And that hit me really hard. Like I said, after about 2 weeks of Netflix, I was done, and I can't do it. And so and I also realized that.
Have to come to that realization, though, Doc. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and like you said, until you've gone through the fire, then you wouldn't even have that perspective. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It really sucks. I wish there was a way to learn certain things without having to either go through really hard times or fail.
Brother, let me know. Okay.
But I think that our society constantly ingrains in us this idea that we can just have it the easy way, and history has a way of reminding us that that it doesn't work quite that way. And so, these hard times really make us, and I don't mean that lightly. I don't mean to say, well, find the silver lining, because I know people who are really, this has been awful for them, and they can't find the silver lining, and it's not as natural for them to do so, and they're just, you know, freaking out, and they're really struggling. And
but
you know, I wish.
I don't want to go too far down this line of philosophical speaking.
No, let's do it, man. I love it.
This situation has shown a bright light on the fact that we don't take care of each other.
Right. Yeah.
Generally, as a community, the sense of community has dissipated over the years because we have all gone out for ourselves. It's about how much can we amass. I'm not just talking about wealth, but just, you know, on our own. Let's, you know, and we're like hoarders of sorts. We're just hoarding all these things, but we've lost touch with emotionally staying in contact and learning how to connect with people. Bunny and I talk about all this all the time. The inability for people to truly communicate what they're feeling. We text. We you know, we don't make phone calls anymore. We don't go to see, you know. So I think it's important for us to take advantage of this time to press reset. Yes, I have several colleagues that unfortunately have just given up.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm using that as a colloquial term. They've just given up. They said, you know, I'm going to give up and I'm just going to do something else. And that's fine. But why do they have to feel that way?
Right.
You know, they shouldn't have to give up their artistry because it's not considered a certain, the value of that has not been quantized in our society.
Yeah.
You know, and it's thought of as more of a hobby or more of a side thing as opposed to.
But doesn't it also come back to, even no matter what difficult times we all live in, it's how much does one believe in themselves? And it's on many levels, you know, whether it's, you know, we're talking music at this point. So if you believe in yourself and what you're doing musically and you feel that you have something to offer, i.e. like what Doc has been doing for years, what we've been doing for years, but when times hit us or kind of blindside us, whatever that may be, no matter what level, there are those that will go back and rethink it, right? And go, okay, how do we pivot and move or dance on the shifting carpet or whatever that's going to be so that we can get through this? Or is it going to be I can't do this anymore, I'm walking away, you know? And maybe that person, for whatever reasons, has wanted to do that anyway for who knows how long, and this was the perfect excuse to do it, and or the situation to do that in. I mean, and I'm not saying I'm not going to go down only the strong survive, but it's what do you want out of it all? What do we want out of this?
But if we're really deep here, it's always been a cyclical thing like that. We you know, and Doc right up in the beginning. This is a cycle that we're going through here, right? It's the culling. Right. It's the culling. You know.
Yeah, and it's not like you said, Bunny. It's not like an only the strong survive kind of thing. What it might for some is they might 10 years from now say, you know, the pandemic helped me realize that my true passion lie in this other thing, and only did that because I was trying to please my father, or you know, or whatever. And so it is I think if you stop, take a minute and listen, try and really confront the reality of your situation and be honest with yourself. Like, why did I get into this in the first place? And do I really want to keep doing this after? Then some of us will only be strengthened by that resolve. For me personally, I can only speak for myself, but I've felt that it's like, man, I've never felt more of a calling to be a musician than now, because I realized that that's all I want to do, and I don't want to do anything else. But others might feel like, wow, this is a kind of a relief, because I had been sort of trying to get out of music for a while, you know, and this is my out, you know. You know, everybody deals with these things differently. You know, everybody has to take their own time, and you know, I think of different cultures and different situations around the world. Like when you look at like the Lebanese civil war, when that broke out, we thought this is going to be over in a couple weeks. It went on for like 7 years or something like that, and everybody's just sitting around waiting for the war to end. And the people that went through that have much longer tolerance for chaos, because they're like, look, man, like this life is about playing the long game, and so other people want to see results now, and so we all just gotta, I think, leave room for everyone to deal with this on their own time. But
it's just self-reflection, and everybody just needs to have a drink.
Well, the problem is so one thing now,
We're so thrilled to welcome to the B-side family. We have our good friends at Remington Family Distillers. I'm drinking a fantastic drink here, their Cafe del Fuego liqueur, along with the Remington Family vodka, and it's quite tasty. You can hear the twinkling going on. It's quite good.
You can hear the slur in my voice.
They're right up the road from me, right?
Well, they're going to be sending you some. They're going to be sending you some goodies.
All right, they're right up in Austin, right?
They're right up in Austin, Texas, right down the road, and we're really thrilled to have them on board. And if you want to find out more about them, you can go to rfdistillers.com and check them out if you want to find out. But they're fantastic, and we're really thrilled to have them part of the family. And they're our presenting one of our presenting sponsors for the B-side, and also the Jazz Eclectic Concert Series when that comes back. So,
speaking of cocktails, Doc, is there a certain, when the club was open, is there a certain preference whether people are going for whiskeys or wines or like what's the, down home there? What's the, the overall?
We put a lot of effort into our cocktail program, and there's only
and the thing is, a cocktail program. It's not a.
The thing is,
you have to earn your certificates.
The thing is, wine. You don't have a wine program. You have a wine inventory, and so if you want to be like a place that's known for their wine, you need to have one expert, the sommelier, and they need to be fashionable and entertaining and personable with the guests. But really, they need to know how to get the deals and how to stock the wine cellar. And it costs a lot of money to have. I mean, a lot of places will have $100,000 in wine down in the basement. And we decided we didn't have the space for that. We didn't have the capital for that in the early days. And so our wine inventory has been great, but that's never been what we really wanted to pride ourselves on. I mean, we'll leave that to the steakhouses. So we put everything into creating the greatest cocktails. And we found that, I think, hands down, people in San Antonio would vote us as we always won the polls in the magazines and stuff as the best craft cocktail places. Nice. And the way to do cocktails is you really have to take your time when you're making them. And because the thing is, the number one sensation that you should get when tasting any cocktail, I don't care what anybody says, is cold. That cocktail should be really, really cold, but you have to figure out a way to get it cold without diluting it too much. So you don't just want to put it on ice and then leave it and let it cool down, because your water content is going to screw up the balance. So you have to, you've got to either shake it for a long time or you've got to use large format ice. And to me, whenever I go into a bar in New York or Los Angeles or anywhere, the first thing I always order is a Manhattan, because that will tell me whether the bartender knows what they're doing or not. And if they don't know what they're doing, that's fine, but then I'll just switch to wine.
Why a Manhattan? Why is that the drink that tells you?
Manhattan is extremely simple, and if it's not really, 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 really cold, then something's wrong. And so I've gotten Manhattans that were served like on the rocks with just little ice cubes and stuff, and that doesn't work because I trust me, I'm not a snob when it comes to this stuff. I just want something done.
I'll let you know it's okay if you are.
Yeah, but I'm not.
Yeah,
Really.
Don't shy away. I think
Oh,
I think snob is oftentimes used way too derogatorily.
It is, but you know the thing about the snob. When I think about the word snob, I think of someone who's a phony, and the reason I say that is because you can take 20 people who consider themselves wine connoisseurs and who live in Beverly Hills, and I promise you, I can fool them on a $9 bottle of wine and convince them that it's a $400 bottle of wine, because the thing is. Now that's a snob. A snob is someone who thinks that they know what they're talking about and they don't. And the same thing with jazz. It's like, you can play a terrible solo, but set it up just right, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, that was true art." And so I don't want to get I mean,
you can't go for every single time.
You know the story about Mingus. That Mingus he got like a middle school band, and he put him behind a curtain. And he got a bunch of jazz critics in, and he had them play. And the jazz critics were like, "Oh, that was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard," And he pulls the curtain back with a bunch of middle schoolers, and he's like, "You idiots," But the thing is, I know when it comes to cocktails, I know my limitations, and I can tell a good Manhattan as well as anybody. But all the other stuff, when you start getting into vermouths, into absinthe, and all, I'm a total rookie. But the Manhattan is pure. It's like if a jazz musician can't play a simple blues, then you don't want to have anything to do with them. Same thing with the Manhattan.
You really feel, Doc.
No, we do the same thing, Bijon, when we go. Sam's been there too. When we go to Herbs and Rye, you got to come out here when it's time. We have to have you out to our show here at Smith's.
I love this. You have to come out, by the way.
Yeah. We go to Herbs and Rye, which is this place in town, and they make great cocktails.
I think that's where we went after we did the record, Bijon. Because we played a gig in Vegas at the Smith Center.
That's right. And we went to No, it wasn't Herbs and Rye. It was oh my gosh. It wasn't Herbs and Rye. But yes, it was another cool place.
Okay, cool.
If it wasn't Herbs and Rye, you did it wrong.
Really?
Well,
exactly.
We knew about it. It was before we.
You got to get a Manhattan, or even honestly, even like talk about the martini is the most misunderstood cocktail of all time. And if a bartender is truly honest, there's no such thing as like the stock. There's no right way to make a martini. It's so subjective, and whether you use gin or vodka or serve it, any different way. But, there's so many bad martinis out there. So if you just go up to a bartender and say, "Make me a martini the way you would like to make it," you can tell a lot.
Well, that kind of, I guess, chimes into our cocktail corner segment of the show, really. I mean, when you're drinking, so you're a cocktail connoisseur, right? So to speak, right? So.
I mean, I like drinking.
But in terms of, do you have a certain cocktail with a certain album or a certain artist? Will you say, "I'm going to drink a whiskey with said artist, listening to an album," or this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hear. I don't want to get too philosophical again, but this gets into the idea of synesthesia, which is the mixing of senses, right? And so the composer Alexander Scriabin had a little color wheel where he associated certain keys with different colors. People go on acid trips and they taste the color red, all this. That's what you get into when you're talking about, like, why is it that the color blue goes so well with jazz? And you think about Kind of Blue, and you think about Blue Like Jazz, and you think, if you ask 100 people what color goes best with blue, probably with jazz, most of them would say blue. So when I think about cocktails, I've never actually, that question has never occurred to me the way you just asked it, but it's a great question. And I would have to say, if I was going to listen to Duke Ellington, I'd want like an old fashioned or a Manhattan or something very simple, very well balanced. If I was going to listen to, like an Oscar Peterson record with Oscar Peterson and Ray Brown and Ed Thigpen, I'd probably just want like a really nice Cabernet, like a whole bottle with a steak. I want my steak and my potato and the whole bottle of Cabernet, and I want it all to myself, you know. And then if I'm thinking about like Miles Davis in the 60s, you know, with his second quintet, that's where you want to get into your funkier cocktails, where you've got these weird exotic type of flavors and everything. But a lot of times, depending on the time of year, because in Texas sometimes it's really hot, other times it can get really cold. Like there are certain nights where I'm like, this for whatever reason is just a straight up vodka martini night. And you can ask my bartenders, I'll go and I'll say, guys, you're going to think I'm crazy, but make me a super dry vodka martini and make it as cold as humanly possible. And then I might not do that for another 6 months, but I do think there's something there into those flavors, and even the type of glass that you're holding and the type of music that you're listening to. And then when the month of April comes around in Texas and it starts to get hot, the first thing I do is pull out Willie Nelson and a 6-pack of beer.
Hey, don't sleep on ice cold. Yeah, don't sleep on ice cold beer, man. Don't sleep on ice cold beer, man.
No way, man. I mean, it's that every April and May, it's that right the go-to thing, you know.
Only a true Texan would say Willie Nelson.
Oh, he's my spirit animal.
Oh my gosh, dude!
But I'm a big believer in like seasonality and music and cocktails and everything. Like what I listen to and what I drink and what I eat in the month of November could not be more different than the month of June. You know? You can't pay me to listen to Sinatra in July when it's 105 degrees out. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But as soon as it starts to get cold, it's like, boom, Sinatra goes on. You know, it's the funniest thing.
Yeah, but it makes total sense. And that's the thing. That's why we started Cocktail Corner, you know, even when we did Cocktail Corner at your venue back in November. Because a lot of people don't think of it that way. Like you said, it's like you think of that, but you're not thinking like, wait, what album or what artist would I listen to with this kind of a cocktail? Yeah. It's an interesting way of listening to music.
Yeah, and it would be so fun. We've thought about this, and I think classical, like chamber music groups have done this before, but we've toyed with the idea of trying to create like the most curated all-in experience that you could possibly have, where you get the music of Cole Porter paired with a specific type of wine, paired with a specific type of dish, and a certain kind of lighting. Yeah. And as much as I love the idea, I wonder if the sum of the parts, or if what how's it go? If the sum of the parts would be less than the whole. Is that right?
Well, I mean, also you don't want to give a.
What's the right way to say that?
You wonder if
the toothpaste is already out of the tube.
Yeah, that's what, the sum of the parts would be less than the whole. And here's why: is because back to the people and to the audience, people know when they're being manipulated.
Oh yeah.
And so where's the line? It's like if I'm going to give you this cocktail, and I'm going to give you this dish, and I'm going to give you this song, and I'm going to set the lighting this way, and I'm going to give you this candle. All of a sudden, I think there's a line that gets crossed where people think, you know, this was a lot of fun last week when I just walked down, and it was all like happening, and it might not have been perfect, but it was natural. But tonight, you're like trying to perfect something on me. And I'm a human being, and I don't think it's working. So I've always I would love to push it to the limit, but I've always wondered if maybe it's almost like Icarus flying too close to the sun and his wings melt.
Right.
But I think also from an artistic standpoint, you have to have a level of integrity where people don't feel manipulated. You're just. You know, if if your place of where you're coming from, what you're performing is real, and has a level of integrity that transcends any type of quantitative, you know, whatchamacallit, what's the word I'm looking for? Quantitative emotion or something like that. Then, you know, I think people will buy into it. I think that's. You know, people. You can play an original piece of music, And if it connects to them, the people will say, "Oh, I've heard that tune before." It's like, no, you haven't heard that tune before. This is the first time you played it tonight. But thank you. It connected with them. So that's the level of integrity I think we all shoot for as artists when we're playing. So.
And they say that the true chef is someone who cooks food that they would eat, and I feel the same way about a musician. And so, to your point, Bijon, about integrity, you have to ask yourself, whatever I'm asking my customers to pay for, would I pay for that myself? Would I do that myself? And so when I think would I put on a Tony Bennett record and pour a glass of red wine and make pasta in my own kitchen? Absolutely. I did it like 2 nights ago, like all day long. Tony Bennett, red wine, pasta. You'd have to be crazy to not enjoy that. But would I spend all day, pulling out just the right record and just the right 5 different liqueurs to combine and make all the courses and have all the play? And would I go to that length myself? And if the answer is no, then there's a loss of integrity there. And so we probably shouldn't ever ask our guests to do something or go through something that we wouldn't go through ourselves. And I feel like as cool as it would be now, maybe the older I get, maybe at some point I'll get to the age where I say, what I really want is this all-in sort of curated experience, and that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to ask other people to come along with me. Right. But I just get too much pleasure out of a simple plate of pasta and a big band record and a bottle of wine.
You just brought up an interesting, almost like a prefix night of dinner, a cocktail, and a certain style of music. Like a total prefix kind of menu of things,
honestly, when we do our shows at Proprietors Reserve, the Pam and the gang over Divine Events, they think about the food and the appetizers and stuff that they're going to present at the for the event that we do there. So and they give it a great deal of thought. And
well, it all plays in, like you're saying, with food. It all plays in: food, cocktails, and it's the overall experience, right?
Yeah, but I think to Doc's point is you still leave the option to choose between plates or drinks, right? You can't just say, I'm going to put all this together, because then it does feel in a way like you're trying to manipulate the setting, and it feels like maybe this isn't exactly what I came looking for from the show and this venue. So,
it's a weird line. It's it's almost like, to use a romantic analogy, if you went out on a date with somebody and they took you to this amazing restaurant and they were dressed to the nines and everything was great, and you danced a little bit to the band, and maybe there was even a limo or something like that, but no further. It's if those things were in place, then the rest of the night would probably go really well. But if you found that it was a little bit too curated, you'd get a little creeped out. You'd be like, wait a minute. I think that this person's already made up their mind the way that this evening is going to go. And you're not figuring me into the equation because I might have different ideas. And so, it's a balance. It's you don't want all the decisions to be made for you, but you definitely want some of them to be made. And so it's, but then again, there's a restaurant called Alinea in Chicago that I've never been to, but it's voted consistently as one of the greatest restaurants in the world, and they leave nothing to chance. Every single thing is thought out for you and planned for you, and people pay like $500 a person to have this experience. But I think I would be a little bit weirded out in that situation.
Yeah,
I think I just go to Lou Malnati's and get myself a deep dish.
Right.
Double pepperoni, double cheese, and I don't know. That's not. Well, sometimes that's just as satisfying as the $500 Alinea meal. Right?
More often than not, I think that a big old thing of pizza or lasagna and a bottle of cab.
Pizza is my thing, man. Pizza is my weakness. Pizza. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know. We're going to share that with you anyway.
Well, before Bijon takes us to like Food Network land over here. Doc, I hate to say this, but we're winding down on the time that we got with you for tonight. So I know you guys, you got some other shows that are still coming up. Where can people catch you? Where can they keep up with the live streams and what's happening with Jazz Texas?
Well, you can just go to my website anytime, docwatkins.com, and it's all there. Everything from the live streams to the upcoming shows to the online course to the, everything. We've got, if you're in South Texas, we've got 16 shows coming up in San Antonio at the Tobin Center, starting December 8th, running through the 20th. And other than that, just find me online, all the social media channels and websites and all that stuff. I'm pretty easy to find. And man, this has been like a ton of fun. We really ought to make this like an extended thing and just keep going until we all fall asleep.
To all ordering.
we run out of booze. It's like I'm going to have to call up Remington Distillery and go, we ran out of the cafe.
We're going to need you to bring us some more of that.
No, this was a lot of fun, man. Thank you for being a part of our show, brother. It's good to see you.
I love to talk about this stuff, man. It's why we do it, It
is, yeah.
Well, and we can't wait to come back out to San Antonio and really do it up. You were such a gracious and awesome host last time we were there, and made a lot of new friends in the area that came out to check it out. So it was really a real treat for us, and we'll come out there and spend a little more time and check out a few more of the restaurants. You're going to have to give us a little restaurant tour. Check out a few places after we eat dinner at your spot. What's that little hole in the wall joint that has the breakfast tacos? What's the name of that place?
Garcia's?
Yes.
Best breakfast tacos. Did I tell you?
The first time I was there, I went there. You told us where it was, and we walked down the river walk and did the whole thing. Yeah, we got to do it. We got to do it.
Absolutely, man. I miss you guys. Can't wait to see y'all back here, or Vegas, or LA, or Boston, or wherever it is. Well,
we're definitely going to have you out here in Vegas, obviously, or out there.
We'll have you in Vegas.
Yeah. Don't worry, that's a done deal. And we got a lot of cool things coming down the pike that we would love to have you be involved in with us. So, thank you again, friend, and all the best to you and your family, and the Jazz Texas family for them being such great hosts to us as well. I mean, from top to bottom, man, the service and the customer service and everything. The chefs were awesome. The mixologists, the hostesses, hosts, everyone. So that's a testament to you, man, setting that tone and setting, no pun intended, setting that tone, creating that environment, man, and that culture there. It's a testament to you, and like I said, it should be a model for clubs to take into account all those things that you do. So love you, brother. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, brother. To the hang, boys.
Thank you, guys.
That's
to
right.
The hang.
To the hang.
To the hang.
To the hang.
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
We'll do. That was incredible.
Was
I
that
looked
it?
down at the and I didn't realize how long we've been talking. That was great.
Yep.
Let's
keep on moving.
Doc, let's do some pre-recordings for transitions into the song, and I think after that we'll be good to go. You'll be on your way for the night, my friend.
Right. Cool.
Boys, how do you think? How do you feel about each of us introducing and doing a little transition on our own? Since we have 3 songs, are you comfortable with that?
Well, I mean,
sure.
Well, Doc's going to introduce his own tunes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just, I'll do the first one so you get the feel for it. And then what I'm thinking is if both of you want to do one after for the other 2 songs, then that way we have, kind of a mix in our voices for it.
Do I have?
Yeah, and maybe what do you think about having Doc do all 3 just to have it on file?
Yeah, I think Doc can do all 3 just for
Doc's going to explain all 3, and we'll do the transition and ask about the song, and then he'll explain the song for us.
Okay,
Sound good? Okay, so I'll take the first one here. All right, well, we got to take a quick break here before we come back and continue talking with Doc Watson. Ugh, my gosh. Okay, let me do that again.
Line's kicking in.
Bijon Watson.
I owe you an apology. I put you down on everything as Doc Watson, which I realized it's the name of an old professor that I have, so I apologize. I completely butchered your name there. Please forgive me. Let me pick this up for you. Well, hey guys, we got to take a quick break here on 91.5 Jazz and More. But before we do, Doc, go ahead and introduce this piece that we're going to be listening to.
Well, this is an arrangement that I did on Vince Guaraldi's Linus and Lucy, which you may remember from A Charlie Brown Christmas, but it's not so much a holiday tune. It's like a year-round tune. And I always thought, being down here in San Antonio with Latin jazz and salsa music, that what if we took this tune and kind of put a salsa vibe to it? And so that's what we did. So we recorded it with a full big band, and it's got a little salsa solo in the middle. And we call this one Linus and Lucy in San Antonio.
Here it is by Doc Watkins. We'll be back with you in just a bit. All right.
Nice.
All right, Bunny, you're up, brother.
Which one is it, hun?
Just whatever you want to say. We're just doing it off the cuff here for this one.
You mean like coming back, like a welcome
going
back?
into a break.
I'll do San Antonio Rose because I played on that one.
Perfect. You want to take that one and do it now, Bish?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So we're going to take a little break here. Hope you're enjoying listening and checking out our man Doc Watkins that we have. This is a tune that I had the pleasure of recording with Doc in Los Angeles. It's a tune, San Antonio Rose. Doc, can you tell us a little bit about that tune?
Yeah, this is an old classic Western swing tune written by Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys. And one of the things we love to do is take old Western swing tunes and put them in a jazz big band setting. So we came up with a unique arrangement of this tune. So this is like old country. I mean, this is back in the days, the 40s and 50s in South Texas, where dirt roads, where now there's freeways and overpasses and everything. But we put this music, this old country Western music, in a modern big band setting. And it was so much fun to have you on it, Bijon. I'll never forget that session. We knocked out a lot of music in that session, man. So
you dig.
He couldn't help himself.
What?
It's awesome.
That's so great. I'll just do this quick little one, hon. The right, the one where it says drop at 754.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, here we're going to take a little break with some music here, and we'll be back to talk more with our special guest, Doc Watkins, here on 91.5 Jazz and More.
Awesome. Okay, and let's do that one more time. I know you have the script there. And instead of going straight to Jazz and More, we're going to take a little break here with some music. Doc, tell us a little bit about the song we're about to hear.
And this is which song is this? This is Hildebrand Avenue, the other one? Okay,
yes.
Gotcha. Great.
Well, hey, we're going to take a little break with some music here, and then we'll be back to talk more with Doc Watkins.
Watkins?
Wakanda.
Wakanda forever.
It's Wakanda.
Wakanda forever.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm going into my third glass of wine, kids. I'm going in.
It made the blooper reel.
This is what's happening. Well, hey, we're going to take a break with some music here, and then we'll be back to talk with Doc Watkins, our special guest. But before we get into this, why don't you tell us a little bit about this next song?
Yeah, this one's called Hildebrand Avenue.
What are you doing?
Thanks for listening to this episode of B-Side with the Jazz Eclectic. We'd like to thank Doc Watkins for joining us on this week's show, and we'd also like to give a special shout out to our incredible studio partners at 91.5 Jazz and More, the crafters of the perfect cocktail at Remington Family Distillers, and the hosts of B-Side Live, Proprietors Reserve.